believers. Hey, you believers. Hey, you non-believers who haven't left. I know there's a few of you out there. Welcome to Leaving Hillsong. It's so great that you're back for part 2 of Keep Moving Forward. My name's Tanya, and I am so happy that you're here. You decided to tune in and listen in to our conversation. And Helen was saying before that it's like, it's like we're sitting at a bar or something. Now, last we left off with your classic Leaving Hillsong cliffhanger. And Hel had been in Hillsong at college 2005, 2006, when, due to an increasing depression, his attendance just dropped right below what was expected in order for him to maintain his visa. He had come out from Puerto Rico for this very special college situation. And we're going to pick up from there. I just wanted to let you know I've done something a little bit different this time. There's a few swear words in this episode. And so what I've done this time is we're going to have just the same episodes, and I'm going to call one edited, one unedited. So before you progress, check which version you're listening to. It's a funny thing, the old language, like I'm not particularly attached. I just want people to speak freely. But, I grew up in one of those households where, they'd be happy to watch those like super violent movies. My parents are fine with that. People getting shot and thrown under trucks and all kinds of stuff and whatever, but they mustn't swear. So, we're all about options here at Leaving Hillsong. Here's some options. This is part 2 of Keep Moving Forward. Have you got your snacks ready? Because this is a good fun chat and there's a lot of great concepts come up throughout this conversation. I love this approach. Welcome to Keep Moving Forward Part 2 with Angel Huertas.
Rightfully, in regards to my attendance, I was not meeting my quota in the attendance. So then, because I wasn't making,
we're still in the first year here.
This is 2006. Sorry, so I started summer 2005. So I would say around Easter time of 2006. This was kind of starting to come up, as in now you have to go to immigration and go to an appointment to see what can be done, because we have to send in these reports, and in the reports it shows that your attendance is not up to par.
And we're going to drive you there and send a support person with you?
No. Yeah, I went on my own. I went on my own. I had a friend of mine that went with me. And it's funny because she came into the appointment with me like she was kind of like my wife or something. This is Elena. Shout out to Elena. She is my Puerto Rican friend, and she was a balsam, a well of living water for me. And I really she was like my sister, and we're still really good friends. But she went to the appointment with me, and she sat through the appointment with me. All the protocol of that meeting that lasted probably maybe 25 minutes, but it felt longer until they finally delivered the news that they were going to cancel my visa.
Oh, okay.
And that's when
had you argued to stay?
I was trying to plead my case. I was like,
right.
But they said, no, we don't find our fit. And after that, they did lay out the option. So you have the option of actually appealing this. Okay. This is going to consume some money, but you have the option even to appeal these funds that you had to lay down. Anyways, at that point, I knew those procedures, and I had like a week to kind of put it together. But I left that meeting kind of feeling all zombie-ish, and how did I tell my parents that I'm getting kicked out of Hillsong, and not only Hillsong, but getting kicked out of the whole continent. It was tough for this 22-year-old to be like.
And how did you do it? How did you do it? I'm feeling overwhelmed, like my visa just got cancelled while you're talking. Like it's a lot at once. That's school, that's you, that's what do you tell the church at home?
Yeah.
And your
And
parents.
I was on my own. I was on my
Mm.
own. Like Hillsong did. I stopped existing. I stopped existing. And it was like no longer our
What do you mean?
problem.
What do you mean you stopped?
Like, because I would go to church every so often and I didn't get acknowledged. Like they would see me and it was like I was literally the treatment changed. The treatment changed, like with people like Lee Burns and stuff like yeah. So I knew there like I was
Brutal.
literally on my own. And with my housemate, I mean that housemate I told you about that was still really good friends. He was great support. He was great
How
support.
how long did they give you before you got to go?
Yeah,
And
I think I had like a
place,
month.
did they pay for you to like
I
or
don't
like
remember. I don't remember all those things, but I know that
sorry.
I know that there's some auxiliary measures if you have any kind of
Yeah.
thing. But they did lay out these are the options you have. You can appeal. So what I did was, you know what? I'm not ready to leave. Even if I'm gonna get kicked out of Hillsong, I want to stay here. So I appealed. And then I also appealed to the fees that I had to pay because I didn't have the money. So I appealed. I submitted all
Right.
documents. It was an amount of money like close to $2,000 I did not have. And it would be refunded back to you if you won the case. So I
Ooh.
appealed all those funds. And sure enough, within a few days, they granted my appeal. I didn't have to pay anything, and then they were going to start an investigation.
Oh, into
So
an investigation into what? Sorry.
as in if there is like, is this decision that we're going to make um solid? Is this like, does it
Okay.
make sense? I want to kick you out of the country. So basically, during that process, I'm going to submit documents. I'm going to submit my case. I'm going to submit my argument. And I had some friends helping me out. To make up to solidify my case about my depression and all these things. So what happens then is they rip up my visa and they give me a new provisional visa that has
Mhm.
no expiry date until
Wow.
it is resolved. So that was really cool and interesting because I was supposed to leave Australia maybe within a few weeks and I was still there. Months passed by and I could see when people saw me, what's he still doing here? And I was able to stay probably, I was meant to leave in like my original visa would have expired in August and I ended up staying till November out of my own decision. Decision had not been solved yet. And during that time, a lot happened. Like from like March, April, May, June, July until November. And that's when a lot of deconstruction happened for me.
Okay. Okay.
And I was there in Hillsong.
All right. Walk us through that.
So even before I got kicked out, I was becoming a little bit restless with the predictability of the services. I was one to welcome the spontaneity or everything. And I soon became aware that this spontaneity that the service gave the impression of, it was just an impression. You know, you had the lights, you had the songs, but everything was so very well timed. The music, the time when the person would come in to talk about the offerings, when they would come in to introduce the preacher. And soon enough, I was like, this is going to happen now. This is going to happen now. This is going to happen now. And it just seems so well, it seems like a well-oiled machine, but it's not meant to be a machine. It's meant to be this organic, free flow of the spirit, no? That God is going to move and flow us. But I was like, now people are going to, now the young people are going to go up front. They're going to do this little pseudo mush pit, jump up and down, sing these rock and roll songs. And soon enough, I started becoming weary of it. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. This music doesn't make any sense. I started wondering, like, why does God need his music? Why does God need us to be singing these songs? Like, is he sitting somewhere, fatting himself and just kind of eating some elitist grapes or something? I was seriously asking myself these questions because it stopped making sense to me. I literally started having this existential crisis. I'm like, how is this? How is this God? And if this is God, wow, this is like, so we have to do concerts every Sunday and God is, meanwhile, there's like world starvations, places don't have clean water. but God has time to every 9 o'clock in the morning enjoy these concerts that we
Mm.
all over. So I was making these questions on my own, on my own, on my own, on
Mhm.
my own. And during that time also I was listening to things. I was listening to, I don't know, back then they were called podcasts, but I was listening to MP3s of a good friend of mine, Jay Baker. I don't know if you know Jay Baker. So Jay is the son of Jim and Tammy Faye Baker of the 80s televangelist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that. Wow.
So back then he had a church in a bar, and he had just become gay affirming. And during that time, I was plugged in, and I remember listening to his message, and that just shook me. I'm like, no way, what is the gay thing? Okay, like, and I start problematizing it. I couldn't stop talking about it. I would talk about it with some friends of mine, and they're like, angels going on, and it's going down a slippery slope. But I was because I'm like, there's something here. There's something here. We talk about God's love. There's something here. So if there is such a thing as God's love. So God loves my gay cousin. God loves love, like love, not like waiting for some love. That's also happening alongside the thing I was telling you about, like
Okay.
starting problems. So all these things are happening at the same time. I'm no longer at Hillsong College, so I don't owe them anything.
Where
I'm
did you live?
legitimately
How did you find somewhere to live and eat and stuff?
see what. So then what happened is I moved. I moved to I was part of a Latino Connect group in Hillsong. So I moved in with one of the Connect group members
Good.
and to his house. So he had me rent a room. So his family took me in. So that was definitely
Wonderful.
a huge blessing where I was there. So I had nothing to do with the college anymore. I would attend Hillsong every now and then. I first stopped attending the music part. I just couldn't do it. I was more interested in what they had to speak. And then I just stopped attending altogether.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
like, God, like everything, just like the triumphalist dynamics, the triumphalist rhetoric of everyone, of every preacher. Like it's always very triumphant. Oh, the best is yet to come. And
What does that word mean? Sorry.
back then, it was just Brian's slogan. The best is yet to come, and the
No,
best
I
is yet
mean
to
the
come.
triumph. What's triumph?
The triumphalist, like a fairy tale, happily ever after.
Okay.
There was always this triumphant, like we're in victory, and I felt like there wasn't space to be defeated. There wasn't space to lose, to be like, I don't feel fucking good right now, and I feel like I feel like shit, and I don't feel like hearing someone say like it's all gonna work out. I just feel like maybe just being silent, but no, it's always like this, just bubblegummy
Mm.
cliche. It's all gonna work out, and that stopped. Maybe I didn't have words to describe. I didn't have the word triumphalist, but it didn't resonate with me. I'm like, I can't be real. I can't expose how I'm really feeling because I'll get diagnosed or something, and I'll get prayed over, and then prayed, Prayed and Preyed.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I- you're not even allowed to just have an ordinary, not so great gay or life.
I
Just
s- it was
regular.
hard. It was hard to have it was. I started feeling that like looking back on it, like I was in a sect, a cult,
Why would you say that?
because the people that were in it, you couldn't have an honest conversation about how he's feeling. They'll automatically try to change it, fix it. Like, oh, have you looked at it from this perspective? It's always to the perspective that is convenient to that side. And then
Oh,
started, I stopped having conversations with these people. I'm like, I can't, this is not a safe space. So I had my friend Elena and my housemate Lance, who's shout out to Lance. He was still there, but I could talk to him very real, and I trust him. I still to the day, and I think he's probably still there, which is a rare thing to
more
encounter.
and more so. Yes.
Absolutely. So all throughout that time, some of the very early, let's put it this way, some of the early tiling on my floor was getting planted of what would be a constant life of problematizing, and not out of capricious nature, but out of a bit of a non-conformist nature. Like, this shouldn't be this way. This shouldn't be this way. Little did I know that I was developing some groundwork for what I will become, which is a teacher.
Tell me that link. How does that work?
I think that later on, which is just some years later, I wanted to be in a space where students could come up to the teacher. It's really expose their doubts. It's really expose their problem. Like, expose what they don't get about the class. If we're talking about the academic elements of it, but just really without any fear of being scorned, of being tired, of being like, oh, you're going to ask me 27 questions again about the same thing. No, but that they can truly, really come to. And I had this longing. Then when I came back from Puerto Rico, eventually I decided to go back to university and pursue my teaching career.
Okay. I mean, and to know that that kind of a place exists, that it's possible, that you can apply it to other arenas, I think that's behind so much of what a lot of us do, because once you get that liberty, that freedom of thought, freedom of speech, kind of, and we're all at different places, I think, along the spectrum, because we're all still worried about what your mother might think, or your cousin, or your best friend, or your boss, obviously, but it's a liberty you'd kind of never trade in again, and you can't. And that's why I think a lot of this leaving stuff is actually a message of hope. Like, it's a happy ending. It's, in a lot of ways, I don't know, it is a kind of a intellectually happy ever after, or something.
Yes, yeah, it's an emancipation proclamation. It's like you're experiencing it for the first time. Like, you're realizing for the first time, or fully realizing that you're a bird in a cage, that you're now out of the cage, and that you realize you have wings and you can put them to use.
Yeah.
Because in these spaces, to follow that analogy, but there's almost a suggestion like, oh, you don't need your wings. Wings are to be used if you are afraid or if you need to escape. But if you're safe, then you don't need to flap your wings. But either way, I think that's the pedagogical role of a teacher, not to try to manipulate, even if one wants to stray that student or that pupil to a certain direction, but to allow the pupil that, hey, yes, you have this and you can use it for this or for that. The power is in your hand. To trust, and I was talking about this to my friend, to trust the process. But trusting the process is a process in and of itself to get to that point.
Oh yeah.
It's not easy. But following the very thematic theme, sorry for the redundance of this book, because like leaving, in the leaving, there's a rupture. In the leaving, there's of course freedom, but there is the hardship of now going into that which is probably unknown. And that uncertainty could be very, very fear binding, or it could be very scary, but at the end, I think, at least from my own testimony, or my own testimony, like my own ongoing testimony, because uncertainty is the certainty of life. Uncertainty is the certainty of life.
Yeah.
Is that it's so liberating to walk out of that and to fully ask questions, to not have this fear of a shield about trying to drop on you. And for me, it was liberating to just be like, which happened eventually down the road. Like, I don't want to be a fucking Christian anymore. Like, I don't think I want to be a fucking Christian anymore. And this happened years later, as I was already deconstructed. I was very I was gay affirming. I was going to this Catholic church back home here. I love the priest. He's a very anti-colonialist priest, always talking about the independence of Puerto Rico. And I loved his service to the community. But one day I was like, this whole Eucharist thing doesn't make any sense to me. The whole narrative, Jesus dying for my sins. And I literally had this like hyperventilating crisis. I'm like, this is so fucked up. I had to leave the mass, and I left the mass and went home. And I'm like, as I tell you, I'm like, I can't be a Christian anymore. I can't believe in a God that needs to sacrifice to forgive when we are told the opposite. We're not told, hey, by the way, make a barter so you can forgive another person. We're told to forgive, to forgive. And I felt like, how is God doing a barter it doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
That's
fuck
so
it.
true.
It makes no sense.
I haven't
So
never
then
thought of that.
for God
That's
to forgive, so then he has to kind of make up this thing, and then Jesus has to be the substitutionary. Of course, this is all theological premise that was created later on. There's a whole explanation to this. But when you look on it, the only way that this has any sense is within a Jewish scope of symbolic elements that come together. And if you want to embrace it in a symbolic way, it's beautiful. You can embrace it in a symbolic way. But this is not what it's being preached. It's being preached in this substitutionary method. And Jesus was the substitution for us. And that makes no fucking sense. It is the most morbid approach to love. How do you relate with your partner like in such a way? You're like, so I'm gonna make this really intense sacrifice to solidify our laws. But like in some kind of macabre, like some morbid kind of way. And then there's this thing from one or the other. That to me seems the most distant thing from love, from just being at rest and just being still. And it seems like more like anxiety promoting. Like, yeah, we're gonna kill you, and then but after we kill you, then there's gonna be this thing and all these magical potions coming together. So that'll create a love. So, anyways, this just me zigzagging. But then I'm like,
cool.
it doesn't make any sense to me. And I said that day, I don't want to be a Christian anymore. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm at, but I don't want to be a Christian anymore. This is like maybe like 11 years ago. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, maybe a year ago, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to be a Christian again.
Really?
Um,
Wow.
and that decision came upon the fact that I knew that it re-embrace of Christianity had to do with the teachings of Jesus solely, not the esoteric magical stuff that I don't have any desire to embrace or to go into that mystical level. I don't care. I was embracing in that moment the moral aspect of it, the moral aspect of forgiveness, of love, but also very well linked with my atheism and my agnosticism. So if people ask me, oh yeah, a Christian atheist and agnostic, um, and that plays into a really good conversation. But it's not something I'm dying for. Like if someone asks me and someone feel comfortable with knowing that I'm not a Christian, I'm not going to argue saying, no, I'm really a Christian. I don't care because yo soy ángel, I'm ángel, and I'm trying to learn every day and trying to be present. And that's something close friends of mine know I'm trying to. Like the other day when I was telling you, I ran into Noemi. I hadn't seen her in over like 10 years. Person there, and I not gone to church in a long time. So they did this moment where people are praying for each other. So a lady behind me is like, can I pray for you? I'm like, okay. And he's like, what do you want me to pray for? I'm like, I want to be more present. I'm going to be more present. And that was my prayer request. She never mentioned it once in her prayer request because it was just like the pamphlet prayer. I don't know. But I can be in those settings and I can be okay. I'm not going to be jumping up and down. But where I'm at right now, like I'm at a much peaceful place to understand that there's people navigating in that realm of church, of charismatic churches, and maybe that's good for them. And I'm not going to trivialize their walk. I'm not going to be trying to deconvert them. If a conversation is had and they allow me to be open, but I'm not going to try to reach in to be like, so the outcome of this conversation is hopefully this or that. If they're doing great in life and happy, then I'll rejoice in that. I'll be like, I'm so glad. Are you good with your family? Are you good with your neighbors? Are you good with yourself? And that's great. And you do sing hallelujah every single often in church? Great. And that helps you.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
So that's where I'm at. I'm trying to just work on this perfection.
Yeah, I think the early atheism was so important. And by early, I mean the 2000s and stuff when the great four horsemen of, the white men of the establishment took swings at the columns of my metaphors. But I think it needed, this is just me, I think it needed to be very fundamentalist. No one was going to listen if it hadn't come out of incredibly privileged, white, educated men's mouths. And it was very extreme back then. And it, I mean, you then automatically, you get human results. So you find out that the atheists are just as human as the other group and have power problems and personality problems, blah, blah, blah. And that there's really awful, people outside of the church, and there's actually some great people there. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the phrase I heard the other day where the woman said, we need to extract the benefits of what we learned. So singing in groups is a great thing. All these various things that were beneficial, but outside of that context would be, great. Anyway, where do you kind of draw the line? So now you've made a decision to become a Christian, but you don't want to go in for the blood and the gore and the sacrifice. Then what are you? What's the difference between you and the next average one?
Yeah. No, I understand you perfectly.
I mean, I'm just shooting the breeze. You don't have to
no, that's super.
justify your position to me.
No. This is a great question.
Very interesting. Because it's much more inclusive, and it just does not serve us well to the superiority of the kind of atheist agnostic kind of people, like the ha Christians.
The condescendence.
Yeah, it isn't. It's not useful. It's not helpful, and I don't want to be involved with that. It's not a competition of who's the cleverest and gotcha.
And I think that's a very unsustainable place to be. Is like I share this with friends about my former sarcastic ways. Like I used to bathe in sarcasm. I used to breakfast, lunch, and dinner sarcasm. And gradually throughout my voyage and walk, I realized how much of a projection that was and how much I was not allowing myself to listen. I always had to have the cleverest comment, the funniest thing. And lately, as I'm pilgrimaging now, or just in my relationship, I'm trying to listen closely. I'm trying to ask questions. I'm trying to be the person that I would like others to be with me. And how do I tie this semantic with Christianity? To me, to be frank and honest, and this might sound like, okay, so it's really just a bit of a gimmick. No, I think for me, it's like a bit of semantic. Like in terms of, and when I say semantic is like, because at the end, I don't care if a person says, well, after this conversation we had, I draw the conclusion that you're really not a Christian. I'm like, okay, I really don't care. Or I'll really draw the conclusion that you are a Christian. I don't care. So I embrace that realm of Christianity, even though I feel very uncomfortable at times, but I'm like, I'm not going to be switching back and forth. So I'm just, let's stick with it. Bit of a joke. But seriously, I think it's because I don't want just to be subjected to however some person is going to hijack that definition. Because there's so many Christianities. That's the fact of the matter. There's so many Christianities.
Right.
Even in one church. In one church, you're going to see so many different Christianities, different gods, different perspectives.
Yes.
God is like we can never. And I think it's Peter Rollins. I don't know if you've read from Peter Rollins. He's this Irish philosopher, and he writes books. And he says we can never question God. He's like, okay, what do you mean? We can only question our narratives of God. Because that's all that we have.
Yeah.
We have narratives of God. And then we can also kind of say that with people, but because at the substance level, you can't contain the person. You have the process of getting to know that person, and you can kind of describe that person, but that all knowingness is impossible. So I guess that at the very least could put a person in the humility place of being like, you know what? All I know is that I know nothing. And if more people had that attitude, but to more bring that answer to a conclusion, I think for me, it's just a conversation piece. Like, I'm like, if it so happens, I don't push it. I don't have a banner talking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's just
but if
interesting
it
with
comes up,
identities and what's important to people to actually call themselves as opposed to just say, yeah, I dabble in a bit of this or that, or I like it
uh,
culturally, or my family. It's, you know what I mean? People do things
uh, and it's
contrarian.
also the fact that most of my family are Christian. So I'm a Christian too. Okay, so let's talk about the contrasts. Let's talk about the contrast. And you'll see I hold quite proudly the fact that there are going to be contrasts. Like, I am a member, I mean, via online, of the Satanic Temple. So like, or of the flying spaghetti monsters. So it's like, to me, it's not something that for one, it's not something I do on Sunday morning. I realize I don't attend any church. If someone were to invite me, I would
Mhm.
gladly go. I have no problem. But I do. If someone asks me, are you Christian? Yes, I'm a Christian. Okay. If that's the end of the conversation, that's fine. I don't feel the need to explain. I don't care if that person put me in the category of the most homophobic person. I don't care if the conversation is had. I'll gladly have it.
Okay, so it sounds like it's about the values, not the plot of the story.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's many plots. Yeah, there's many plots.
Mm.
And I still find relevance in the story of Jesus, but I don't need to place his story above any other story because I think it's about the myth. And when I talk about myth, I was talking a friend of mine about this. And we all have myths. I think the approach to a myth, as I approach it, is not a negative approach. It's the story of the story, like the myth that we tell ourselves, like the story that I tell myself about myself. And again, I'm approaching this term with grace. Like, what is the story that Angel tells about himself? We all need myths. The story that we tell ourselves about how we face the day, how we look at the sky and make some
Mhm.
narratives, how we look at the elevator conversation in my building with the old lady that started telling her story, and you create meaning. I don't think there's like this objective 100% truth thing. There's just
Mhm.
how you engage with it, how that soaks you up and affects your day. And that's the beauty of the myth. And I think we're all myth creating beings because we all need the myth. So the Jesus myth for me, and I'm not here discussing if it's factuality or not, but the construction of the story makes I hold meaning to it. Just
Mhm.
like I hold
Mhm.
with with my experiences with my grandfather. And it has the equal amount of meaning. Like
Yeah, I
that.
mean, you can't measure these things. How did your family react when you went, I don't want to be a Christian anymore? How did they go with that?
Oh, my family had been like at that point, it was like I've always been very vocal about my processes. So that was the moment I kind of spoken about myself. It was more a thing I spoke about myself and I had a blog that time and I wrote about it. But my family, I mean, at that time I was going to a Catholic church and they were going to the Protestant
Yeah,
church. So, and my parents always been very respectful of my journey. My family,
fine.
as I look back on everything, they have equally progressed with all the issues, with the gay issue, with the fact that we don't need to be Christian. They're very clear on that. They're very clear on my dad was a pastor. He's very clear on the fact that everyone does not need to be a Christian to have a legitimate relationship with his or her spirituality.
Okay.
And I know that came with many conversations that were not
Yes,
easy,
yeah.
you know. So that is also and a general way of observing kind of the life I've had so far. I've been very lucky because not everyone has these relationships with their mom and dads,
Yeah.
So
Sounds and for a pastor's kid, it sounds very progressive and not in a, like a bad way, but like that it evolves and adapts. And that's the most you can hope for in relationships, really, I guess, isn't it? That, change comes along. Now, you
well,
went back to university as soon as you hit the soil again. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. After I traveled some time, I lived in New York. Again, I left Australia. I wasn't ready to come back here, so I went to New York. That's when I went to my now friend Jay Baker's church and a bar. I knew there was
Uh-huh.
transgender people there, atheist people there, and that was a bit of a contrast from Hillsong. I mean, number wise, it was a small bar, and just the approach. There was no music; it was more of a dialogue, and that also continued my I don't know if I can use this word, but like sensationalization of
Hmm.
everything of the church experience. because it was just sitting down and conversing, sitting down and having a dialogue. And that's something, if I go back on my time at Hillsong, in many churches, because this is the format in like 98% of the churches, there is no space for real dialogue. Preaching is not dialogue. So church
Yep.
culture
Yep.
has a one-way-ish approach.
Yep. Totally.
That's why it's so hard for people who are parishioners in this space to have challenging conversations and to let go of the grip of the conversation, because evangelism, which is usually the main premise of why they go out, is to be in control. I got the answer is no. It's at best to give the illusion that I'm here to converse. No, it's basically the tenets of colonization. Evangelism is basically holding to the very core tenets of colonization. I'm here to tell you what's good for you. I'm here to let you know that you're wrong. I'm here to defend you from all the bad people are going to come. That's colonization. Speaking in terms of Hillsong and how Hillsong has progressed from that time to now, is the perfect example. I go to different cities. I don't really make solid relationship with the churches that have been here for years. I come with my brand, and my brand is going to show the other brands how it's much better. It's colonization 101.
Yeah.
And when you're acting on the opposite of that, that is such a beautiful place to be in, because you open up your ears and you're not there to fix. That book, the Blue Like Jazz book from Donald Miller. And there's this scene in the movie, and it was also a book that said the beautiful thing about jazz is that it doesn't, I might be paraphrasing it, but it doesn't seem to resolve. Jazz is not there to resolve. It's like it's a journey.
Mhm.
So if more of the religious world was like that, oh my God, it would be such a different picture. Maybe churches would be smaller because there'd be less recruits, but it would be a safer space. I don't know
Oh,
if that was the
I'm
question that you're asking.
no, I just love it. It's just all so valid and so good. Uh, but tell me about becoming a teacher.
Glad, and that was your question.
Yeah.
So in 2011, I
Okay.
I seek the this was literally 10 years after I had just 2001. I started my first run of university, and
Mhm.
in 2005 I go to Australia. So in 2011, so 10 years after my first university journey, I go back. So I'm like usually the oldest kid in the classroom. And that gave me a sense of pride, like the oldest one. But I've always been kind of part of the flock of the youngsters. Like people, every time I tell them I'm 40, they like, show me your ID. You're not 40. And it's just the demeanor, the way I dress, I think is part of it. But that going back to university at that level, that mind frame had traveled a bit, it was so different than my first time around.
Okay.
And my relationship with my relationship with my professors was it was more intentional.
Yeah.
Like I would stay overlapping after my classes, just talking with them. It was different than when I was 18.
Yeah, the mature age student, you're that one, like, I got one more question and stuff. Yeah.
It was like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
let the teacher or the professor dismiss the class, and you do whatever the hell you want. Little by little, I approached things that way. I was respectful of people's times. I was not that greedy, but it was great. And I knew what I wanted to study. I didn't like when I was 17 coming out of high school, and I wanted to, like, I wanted to be a teacher, whether that would be elementary school teacher, high school teacher. I just wanted to be a teacher. And I went down the path of language and studied ESL. But the real core value that I was in for was for the pedagogical classes, the classes about development, about just critical pedagogy, there's social sciences classes, fundamental elements of the philosophy of education, all these classes that right now some of them escape but the professors were great. I loved my relationship with professors,
Mhm.
the different thinkers I discovered, like Paulo Freire from Brazil, who's rest in peace, long gone, but his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which is one of the books that really impacted me from his late writing, it showed me that teaching was about liberation. and the liberation of the oppressed. It isn't just about facts and numbers. It is about the empowerment, the empowerment against those who want to be empowered
Mm-hmm.
and who want to basically starve education. And we see that here in Puerto Rico. We see it here as the public university little by little gets privatized bit by bit. And we see it in other countries too. So that gave me a lot of enthusiasm for what I was learning and for what would be later on my profession, which is now my profession. So during that time, it had a lot to do with my travels, it had a lot to do with the people I met, the places I'd been. I wanted to create this. If I were to share with you my imaginarium of the things I was thinking about, I wanted to create the classroom space to be a safe space for
Mm-hmm.
kids to know, that there will be nothing too childish or too unimportant for them to enthusiastically share with the teacher. So create that culture of you're a full human. You're a full human. You're not a human. You're a full human as you are. And even more so, the fact that they're so far more in tune, I think, with the senses of wonder that are all around us, that we have kind of lost the luster of life and with their cynical ways. So that's something I really get from the kids. The humor,
Yeah.
transparency,
Yeah,
all that. And I experienced that in Germany too. So there isn't much of a difference. Yeah, culturally there's differences, but the essence of childhood
Mm-hmm.
is there. So far, I'm so glad that I made that decision of going back to university at old age. I'm putting
These are
quotation marks.
such a lovely. These are such beautiful ideas. What else do we want to tell people?
I think it's a good
This
place
is
to
so
wrap up.
lovely, though. So
Yes, and Louis Frutal, I've enjoyed it very, very thoroughly. For anyone who's listening, anyone who's been involved in, given the fact that this is a specific Hillsong connected podcast or just church in general kind of connected.
I heard that Ben, you said podcast like an Australian.
See, so there's a little bit of that. And I think that everyone's journey is sacred. Everyone's journey is so sacred. Even for
Yes.
even for students that might be going to Hillsong now. Like, I don't feel it's my place to discourage that. If there is an opening for real conversation to be had, I can have, but I don't think it's my place because no one did it for me. And I don't mean to suggest like, yeah, lead them on to like really horrific, traumatic experiences, because I think a genuine conversation could be had, but not, at least me, I don't feel like it's my place to be proselytizing the other way around. But this I do want to highlight, we are in a time that many things that were going on then, but are now so on the surface that they're very hard to ignore. And they're very important things to address of an organization as large as Hillsong, even though it's slowly shrinking, but it's an organization that still has a lot of influence. And there are so many undeniables of the abuse of power, of the abuse of their positions. And I think those things need to be addressed. So if a conversation is odd, there are other options. Of course, if someone wants to study theology or something, there are many options, better, way better. But I guess my approach is to say that I'm not going to judge a person if they're going, because I was going that direction. But there are better options. There are better options. And to wrap up, each journey is so sacred. Each journey is so sacred, wherever it might be at. Like I mentioned before, like to trust the process, And I'm still trying to trust the process. It's always it's like the utopia, no? There's the utopia, as Eduardo Galeano says, you have the utopia over there. You see the utopia in the horizon. Okay, so you walk towards the utopia, you take 5 steps towards it, and then the utopia takes 15 steps, and you take 10 steps, and the utopia takes 30 steps. And what is the purpose of this unattainable that you keep on moving forward and you keep on moving forward? So I think there are the utopias in life that are not about attaining them, but allowing us to keep on moving. And the best is yet to come. Just joking.
No, I love it. That's so beautiful. I love
Yeah.
all that. It's so cool. It's so cool. I don't have the right words. which is
All
good.
right. Igual, and like you, it is very cool. It's good things to keep there whispering at us.
Yeah, you've given me a lot to think about as well.
Well,
You're so-
gracias.
Thank you
Con
so much
gusto.
for sharing.
With pleasure.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
adios. Ha sido un
Thank
gusto.
you.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you, Tanya, and everyone else who's listening. A pleasure that you take the time to listen to us converse.
Yeah, wonderful. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Adios.
You know, I was a little bit distressed by that sarcasm discussion. I mean, what's wrong with sarcasm for breakfast, lunch, and I don't even know what sarcasm is anymore. I don't even know if I'm joking anymore or not. You spend 20 years looking at these clowns in this circus and you let me know what's funny. Thank you so much for hanging around and listening in. And I love all of these first-person accounts, and there's just so much crossover in history, and it's just fascinating. And thanks so much to Angel for sharing so much with us. I asked him, as I do with everyone, what they would like. Give me a couple of sentences for a bio so I can, what would you like as your bio? And interestingly, his profession as a teacher doesn't come into it at all. It's really interesting. Around these parts, what do you do, and where do you live is the hello and how are you of this country. And Hal says, human, Puerto Rican, critical pedagogist, friend of animals, especially Neruda and Lennon, my two feline buddies, follower of the Gospel of Mr. Rogers. And then he's written a quote, I'm talking to you, so right now you are the most important person to me. Our conversation is the most important thing to me right now. And that's a Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers quote. And that's how I always feel about when I say thank you so much for listening. And it's like, wow, you could be doing anything right now, but you've been having this conversation with us. And I love that. Stay very closely tuned to social media. Next weekend should be a big, fun birthday present one. Knocking on, I don't know, heaven's door or wood or whatever works. It's going to be exciting. Please be kind to yourselves. People are aware that the 17th of August, which is the verdict for Brian Houston's court case, is coming up. Take it easy. Trauma's a funny, funny game. You don't know quite how it's going to jump up at you like Glenn Close in the bathtub. And Fatal Attraction, so be kind to other people. You don't know how many Glenn Closes in the bathtubs they've got in their house. And keep leaving Hillsong. You're doing such a great job. Keep it up. And we'll talk soon. Bye.